Arizona. Arizona is the oven of the United States and often seen as the country's unofficial testing chamber for the human heat tolerance, the Sahara of America. Its story goes back thousands of years to indigenous civilizations like the Hohokam, who built advanced canal systems long before Europeans arrived. Later came the Spanish in the 1500s, followed by Mexican rule, and after the Mexican-American War, Arizona became part of the United States. It officially gained statehood in 1912, making it the last of the lower 48. Much of modern Arizona sits on lands shaped by native tribes, including the Navajo Nation, which remains one of the largest reservations in the country. Known for red canyons, endless desert, dry heat, and sunsets that look unreal, Arizona has an identity built around extremes: scenery, weather, and personality. People here are seen as laid-back, resilient, sun-powered, and slightly delusional for calling 40 degrees Celsius a warm day. Outsiders think Arizonans melt daily. Locals say it's the Californians who melt, not them. They speak in a casual, desert slow tone, often mixed with southwestern slang no one outside the region understands. Cactus, scorpions, saguaros, and monsoon storms define the landscape, while burritos, fry bread, and iced drinks define survival. Arizonans are fiercely proud of their wide-open land, claiming their sunsets are the best in America, and that anyone who complains about the heat should just drink more water. Some even joke the state would function fine as its own desert kingdom, as long as there's air conditioning and enough shade. Texas. Texas is the Lone Star State of the United States and often seen as the country's bold symbol of independence, the place that was once its own proud republic. Its story goes back thousands of years to indigenous tribes like the Caddo and Comanche, who hunted vast plains and built thriving communities long before Europeans arrived. Spanish explorers mapped the coast in 1519, followed by French claims, Mexican rule after independence, and a dramatic breakaway in 1836 after the Texas Revolution. It stood alone as the Republic of Texas for nearly a decade before joining the United States in 1845 as the 28th state. Much of modern Texas blends sprawling cities with wide-open ranches, from oil-rich plains to diverse urban hubs like Houston and Dallas. Known for big skies, cowboy heritage, endless highways, and a spirit of everything larger than life, Texas has an identity built around self-reliance, friendly hospitality, fierce loyalty, and unapologetic pride. People here are seen as warm-hearted, straightforward, resilient, and quick with a helpful hand or a tall tale. Outsiders picture non-stop barbecues and boots. Locals know it's the transplants who sometimes overdo the hats. They speak with a smooth drawl that stretches words just right, mixed with Tex-Mex flair no one else quite matches. Brisket smoked low and slow, sizzling fajitas, chili without beans, breakfast tacos, and queso define the plate. Texans are fiercely proud of their everything bigger vibe, claiming their barbecue is unbeatable, and that a little extra spice makes everything better. Some even joke the state would function just fine on its own again, as long as there's room for the grill, plenty of stars at night, and enough room to roam free. California. California is the golden state of the United States, and often seen as the country's dream factory, the place where Hollywood magic and Silicon Valley innovation shaped the world's imagination. Its story goes back thousands of years to indigenous tribes like the Chima and Chumash, who lived off abundant coasts and valleys long before Europeans arrived. Spanish missions lined the land in the 1700s, followed by Mexican rule, a quick Bear Flag revolt in 1846, and the famous gold rush that exploded the population before statehood in 1850. Modern California stretches from foggy beaches to snowy Sierra peaks, with bustling cities, endless farmland producing half the nation's fruits and nuts, and a vibe that mixes laid-back surf culture with high-speed tech ambition. Known for perfect weather, stunning coastlines, towering redwoods, and a spirit of endless possibility, California has an identity built around creativity, diverse crowds, bold ideas, and chasing the next big thing. People here are seen as open-minded, health-conscious, ambitious, and always ready with a smoothie or a startup pitch. Outsiders picture non-stop traffic and celebrity sightings. Locals know it's the quiet hikes and hidden taco stands that make the magic. They speak in a chill valley vibe, mixing surfer slang with tech jargon no one else fully gets. Avocado toast, fresh sushi rolls, In-N-Out burgers, farm-fresh salads, and sourdough bread started here keep the plates colorful. Californians are fiercely proud of their trend-setting ways, claiming their beaches and innovation can't be matched, and that a little sunshine fuels the best ideas. Some even joke the state would thrive just fine on its own, as long as there's ocean breeze, perfect produce, and room for the next dream to grow big. Alaska. Alaska is the frontier of the United States and often portrayed as the nation's final wilderness, an untamed ice-edged kingdom where nature still dictates the rules. Its story stretches back thousands of years to indigenous groups such as the Inupiat, Yupik, Tlingit, and Aleut, who built rich, resilient cultures in some of the harshest environments on Earth. Russia arrived in the 1700s, establishing trading posts before selling the territory to the United States in 1867 in what newspapers mocked as Seward's Folly. Decades later, the discovery of gold, oil, and strategic military importance reshaped the region dramatically. Alaska officially became a state in 1959, making it one of the youngest in the nation. Known for glaciers, mountains, long winters, wildlife encounters, and daylight cycles that defy logic, Alaska's identity is built around extremes: climate, isolation, scale, and spirit. People here are seen as resourceful, no-nonsense, patient, and forged by cold that can humble anyone. Outsiders imagine Alaskans battling snow daily, living alongside bears, and chopping firewood for sport. Locals claim that's exaggerated, but not by much. They speak in a calm, practical tone shaped by remote living, with vocabulary pulled from nature, survival, and bush life. Aurora skies, icy oceans, endless forests, and quiet horizons define the environment, while salmon, hot coffee, and anything warm define survival. Alaskans are fiercely proud of their land's rugged beauty, insisting no other place in America compares to the scale and silence of their mountains and the brilliance of their night skies. They joke that Alaska isn't just a state, it's a test of character, and everything works fine here as long as your truck starts, the snowblower cooperates, and the moose stays out of the driveway. Florida. Florida is a wild card of the United States and often portrayed as the nation's sun-soaked troublemaker, the tropical frontier where the rules are optional and the humidity is always at maximum. Its story reaches back thousands of years to indigenous groups like the Timucua, Calusa, and Seminole, who shaped the peninsula long before Europeans arrived. The Spanish landed in the 1500s, establishing one of the earliest European footprints in North America, before centuries of conflict and treaties shifted the land between empires. By 1845, Florida joined the United States, and ever since, the state has been a crossroads of cultures: Caribbean, Latin American, Southern, and Coastal American all layered into one peninsula. Known for beaches, hurricanes, neon sunsets, alligators, theme parks, and weather that feels like a warm bath year-round, Florida's identity is built around contrast: paradise mixed with chaos, beauty mixed with unpredictability. People here are seen as relaxed yet fearless, molded by humidity, salt air, and a level of sunshine that can fry logic. Outsiders imagine Floridians wrestling reptiles, dodging tropical storms, and living in flip-flops. Locals claim that half of those stereotypes are exaggerated, and the other half are just part of Wednesday. They speak in a breezy beach slow rhythm, blending southern drawl with Miami Spanish, Caribbean cadence, and tourist season exhaustion. Palm trees, manatees, storm warnings, and sunscreen define the environment, while Cuban sandwiches, key lime pie, and iced drinks define survival. Floridians are fiercely proud of their coastlines and cultures, insisting they have the best beaches, the wildest stories, and the most unforgettable sunsets in the country. New York. New York is the engine of the United States and often portrayed as the country's cultural pressure cooker, a place where ambition, noise, art, and attitude all collide at full speed. Its story begins long before skyscrapers. Indigenous nations like the Haudenosaunee and Lenape shaped the region for centuries. The Dutch arrived in the 1600s, founding New Amsterdam before the English took over and renamed it New York. From colonial port to immigration gateway, from industrial powerhouse to global capital of finance and culture, New York evolved into one of the most influential places on Earth. Known for skyscrapers, subways, energy, diversity, and a pace that borders on aggressive, New York's identity is built on intensity. Weather, people, culture, and ambition all turned up high. People here are seen as direct, fast-moving, unbothered, and strangely united by a shared tolerance for chaos. Outsiders imagine New Yorkers dodging taxis, rushing down sidewalks, and surviving on pizza slices. Locals say the reality is accurate, but with better food. They speak in quick, clipped sentences, blending hundreds of languages into a single urban dialect powered by caffeine and impatience. Steam vents, street carts, neon lights, and endless motion define the landscape, while bagels, bodega sandwiches, and midnight meals define survival. New Yorkers are fiercely proud of their city and state, claiming they have the best food, the best skyline, and the most resilient people in the country. They joke that New York could function as its own nation, provided the subway is running, the pizza stays cheap, and nobody stops walking in the middle of the sidewalk. Maine. Maine is the pine tree paradise of the United States and often seen as the country's quiet escape from the chaos, the Canada of New England without the passport hassle. Its story goes back thousands of years to indigenous people like the Wabanaki, who fished abundant waters and harvested wild rice long before Europeans arrived. Vikings must have touched shore around 1000 AD, but the French and English fought over it in the 1600s, followed by Massachusetts rule, until Maine finally broke free to become a state in 1820 as part of the Missouri Compromise. Much of modern Maine stays wild and untouched, with the longest coastline of any state twisted full of hidden coves, plus the massive Acadia National Park that draws millions for rocky shores and fall colors. Known for dense forests, fresh lobster straight from icy waters, crisp air, and small towns where everyone waves, Maine has an identity built around simplicity. Rugged beauty, slow seasons, and genuine neighborliness. People here are seen as independent, hardy, plain-spoken, and slightly suspicious of hurry, the kind who fix their own trucks and know every back road. Outsiders think Mainers hibernate all winter. Locals say it's the summer crowds who vanish when the real beauty hits. They speak in a gentle down-east accent, dropping R's and stretching vowels in a way everyone finds charming but hard to copy. Lobster rolls, wild blueberries, whoopie pies, and clam chowder define the table, while lighthouses, moose crossings, and colorful fall leaves define the views. Mainers are fiercely proud of their wild spaces, claiming their lobster is the sweetest in the world and that anyone who complains about the cold should just add another flannel. Some even joke the state would function fine as its own pine-scented republic, as long as there's strong coffee, plenty of firewood, and enough ocean to keep the boats happy. Colorado. Colorado is the high-altitude heart of the United States and often portrayed as the country's adventure lab. The mountain-built playground where altitude, weather, and lifestyle all push people to level up. Its story reaches back thousands of years to indigenous nations including the Ute, Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Apache, who shaped the region long before Spanish explorers and fur traders arrived. The mid-1800s gold rush pulled settlers deep into the Rockies, transforming mining camps into towns and laying the groundwork for a state defined by rugged terrain and restless ambition. Colorado officially gained statehood in 1876, earning its nickname as the Centennial State. Known for towering mountains, ski towns, clear blue skies, craft breweries, and a climate that can shift seasons in a single afternoon, Colorado's identity is built around elevation, physical, cultural, and psychological. People here are seen as outdoors obsessed, health-minded, calm but quietly competitive, and conditioned by thin air and bright sun. Outsiders imagine Coloradans hiking before breakfast, skiing on weekends, and owning gear for every weather scenario. Locals admit it's mostly true. They speak in a relaxed mountain-paced rhythm with vocabulary borrowed from trail life, avalanche reports, and weekend trips to the slopes. Peaks, forests, snowpack, and wildlife shape daily life, while green chili, energy bars, and strong coffee define survival. Coloradans are fiercely proud of their landscapes, claiming they have the best skiing, the best hiking, and the best sunshine in the country. They joke that Colorado could operate as its own mountain republic, as long as the snowplows keep up, the trails stay open, and everyone remembers to hydrate in the thin air. Georgia. Georgia is the crossroads of the American South and often portrayed as the nation's peach-scented mediator, where hospitality, history, and heat all blend into a distinctive cultural rhythm. Its story stretches back to indigenous civilizations such as the Creek and Cherokee, whose societies thrived long before Europeans arrived. The British established the colony in the 1730s, intended as a buffer and reform experiment, before it later played pivotal roles in the Revolution, the Civil War, and the long arc of the Civil Rights Movement. In 1788, Georgia became the fourth state in the United States, and ever since, it has carried a legacy shaped by conflict, culture, and reinvention. Known for humid summers, rolling hills, pine forests, coastal marshes, and cities that blend charm with intensity, Georgia's identity is built around contrast, old and new, rural and urban, tradition and innovation. People here are seen as warm, resilient, quick-witted, and fluent in the art of storytelling. Outsiders imagine Georgians sipping sweet tea on porches, cheering for college football, and debating the proper way to eat peaches. Locals say that is true, but it is only the surface. They speak in a smooth, melodic southern cadence, with phrases flavored by history, hospitality, and humor. Live oaks, cicadas, summer storms, and long highways define the environment, while fried chicken, peaches, pecans, and sweet tea define survival. Georgians are fiercely proud of their culture and land, insisting they have the most beautiful small towns, the best comfort food, and one of the richest histories in the nation. They joke that Georgia could function as its own southern republic, so long as the biscuits stay warm, the humidity behaves, and nobody disrespects their peaches. Oregon. Oregon is the quiet marvel of the United States and often portrayed as the country's mist-covered sanctuary, a place where forests, coastline, and creativity meet under a permanent blanket of clouds. Its story begins with indigenous nations such as the Chinook, Klamath, Nez Perce, and Umpqua, who cultivated rich societies rooted in the land's rivers, mountains, and forests. European explorers arrived in the 1700s, followed by fur traders, pioneers, and thousands traveling the Oregon Trail in search of fertile ground and a new start. Oregon officially joined the United States in 1859, carrying with it a legacy shaped by wilderness, independence, and migration. Known for evergreen forests, Dramatic coastlines, volcanoes, rain, coffee culture, and a deep environmental ethic, Oregon's identity is built around nature, how it shapes daily life, creativity, and temperament. People here are seen as thoughtful, outdoors driven, slightly introverted, and deeply protective of their landscapes. Outsiders imagine Oregonians hiking year round, wearing flannel in every season, and drinking artisanal coffee brewed by someone who knows your life story. Locals will not deny it. They speak in a calm, deliberate rhythm with vocabulary drawn from trail life, coastal weather, and a niche blend of urban and rural culture. Moss-covered trees, foggy mornings, quiet beaches, and volcanic peaks define the environment, while salmon, craft beer, and anything locally roasted define survival. Oregonians are fiercely proud of their natural beauty and creative spirit, claiming they have the best forests, the best coastline, and a quality of life unrivaled anywhere else. They joke that Oregon could operate as its own evergreen republic, as long as the trails stay open, the rain stays soft, and no one tries to pump their own gas. Kansas. Kansas is the open horizon of the United States and often portrayed as the nation's Great Plains anchor, a wide, wind-shaped landscape where agriculture, history, and quiet resilience define the rhythm of life. Its story reaches back to indigenous nations such as the Kansa, Pawnee, Osage, and Wichita, who lived across the prairies long before European explorers arrived. France and Spain each claimed the territory at different times before it ultimately became part of the United States due to Louisiana Purchase. Kansas entered the Union in 1861 after years of violent conflict over slavery, Bleeding Kansas, making it a central chapter in the nation's struggle over identity and freedom. Known for endless fields, big skies, prairie winds, tornadoes, small towns, and a pace of life rooted in land and tradition, Kansas's identity is built around steadiness, geography, culture, and character grounded in consistency. People here are seen as practical, friendly, hardworking, and shaped by a landscape that rewards patience and grit. Outsiders imagine Kansans living beside wheat fields, chasing storms, and referencing the Wizard of Oz daily. Locals insist they do not make the joke, but they hear it often enough. They speak in a straightforward, measured cadence, influenced by farm life, weather patterns, and small-town familiarity. Grain silos, open highways, red barns, and summer storms define the environment, while barbecue, homemade pies, and strong coffee define survival. Kansans are fiercely proud of their plains, claiming they have the most spectacular sunsets, the most dependable people, and some of the richest farmland in the country. They joke that Kansas could run just fine as its own prairie republic, as long as the tractors keep working, the storms behave, and nobody asks them one more time about tornadoes and ruby slippers. Utah. Utah is the desert jewel of the United States and often portrayed as the nation's red rock laboratory, a place where dramatic canyons, high plateaus, and unique culture converge under vast skies. Its story stretches back thousands of years to indigenous nations such as the Ute, Paiute, Goshute, and Navajo, who lived in and adapted to the region's challenging terrain. European explorers arrived in the 1700s, followed by fur traders and settlers, but it was the arrival of Mormon pioneers in 1847 that truly shaped Utah's cultural identity. Utah became a U.S. territory in 1850 and achieved statehood in 1896, blending rugged wilderness with a distinctive faith-driven society. Known for red cliffs, national parks, ski resorts, desert heat, and mountains that rise sharply from arid valleys, Utah's identity is built around contrasts: desert and snow, wilderness and city, solitude and community. People here are seen as resilient, outdoors-obsessed, courteous, and often quietly competitive about who knows the best trail or powder run. Outsiders imagine Utahns living in isolation, hiking every weekend, or debating the right way to brew Jello. Locals admit some of it is true, but mostly they are just enjoying the scenery. They speak in a clear, measured tone, shaped by both pioneer heritage and modern mountain lifestyle. Arches, canyons, slick rock, and alpine peaks define the environment, while fry sauce, green Jello, and strong coffee define survival. Utahns are fiercely proud of their landscapes and culture, claiming they have the best national parks, the best ski, and a sense of community unlike anywhere else. They joke that Utah could operate as its own Red Rock Republic, as long as the trails stay open, the snow falls, and no one messes with their fry sauce. Wisconsin. Wisconsin is the dairy heart of the United States and often portrayed as the nation's friendly, cheese-loving countryside, a place where lakes, forests, and farmlands shape both life and identity. Its story begins with indigenous nations such as the Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi who lived across the region long before Europeans arrived. French explorers and fur traders arrived in the 1600s, followed by waves of German, Scandinavian, and other settlers who left a lasting cultural imprint. Wisconsin became a state in 1848, blending agricultural roots, immigrant traditions, and a love for the outdoors into a distinctive Midwestern character. Known for rolling farmland, Great Lakes shores, forests, snow-filled winters, and small towns with big personalities, Wisconsin's identity is built around community, resilience, and tradition. People here are seen as hardworking, polite, fun-loving, and shaped by seasons that demand both patience and adaptability. Outsiders imagine Wisconsinites cheering at football tailgates, braving winter storms, and building elaborate cheese displays. Locals nod in agreement, but insist life is about balance, snow shoveling with beer in hand. They speak in a friendly, deliberate cadence, seasoned with German, Scandinavian, and Midwestern inflections. Dairy farms, frozen lakes, pine forests, and small-town festivals define the environment, while cheese, bratwurst, beer, and hot cocoa define survival. Wisconsinites are fiercely proud of their land and culture, claiming they have the best lakes, the best cheese, and the hardest working communities in the country. They joke that Wisconsin could function as its own dairy republic, as long as the snowplows keep running, the Packers keep winning, and the cheese never stops aging. Maryland. Maryland is the microcosm of the United States and often portrayed as the nation's crossroads, a place where history, waterways, cities, and countryside collide in a blend of culture and commerce. Its story begins with indigenous nations such as the Piscataway, Susquehannock, and Natticoke, who thrived across the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries long before European settlers arrived. The English established the colony in 1632 as a haven for Catholics, and over the centuries, Maryland became a key player in trade, the Revolution, and the nation's early politics. It officially became a state in 1788, balancing northern and southern influences while carving out a distinct identity. Known for Chesapeake Bay crabs, harbor cities, forests, small towns, and shifting seasons that range from hot, humid summers to crisp autumns, Maryland's identity is built around diversity. Geography, culture, and lifestyle all vary dramatically across short distances. People here are seen as pragmatic, witty, and fiercely loyal to their neighborhoods, sports teams, and seafood recipes. Outsiders imagine Marylanders navigating traffic in Baltimore, debating the best crab seasoning, and shrugging at snow days. Locals say that's a fair approximation. They speak in a blend of mid-Atlantic cadence, urban sharpness, and suburban calm, often switching styles depending on context. Bay waters, rolling hills, city streets, and farmland define the environment, while crab cakes, Old Bay seasoning, and iced coffee define survival. Marylanders are fiercely proud of their state's natural beauty, culinary heritage, and historical significance, insisting they have the best seafood, the best proximity to major cities, and a unique identity all their own. They joke that Maryland could function as its own mini-nation, as long as the crabs stay fresh, the traffic remains navigable, and everyone remembers that blue crabs are non-negotiable. Tennessee. Tennessee is the soul of the American South and often portrayed as the nation's music and culture engine, a place where rivers, mountains, and melodies flow together to shape both life and identity. Its story begins with indigenous nations such as the Cherokee, Chickasaw, and Creek, who thrived across the hills and valleys long before European settlers arrived. The state was later claimed by various European powers before joining the United States in 1796, becoming the 16th state. Tennessee played pivotal roles in early frontier expansion, the Civil War, and the rise of American music, from country and blues to rock and roll. Known for rolling hills, the Great Smoky Mountains, rivers, barbecue, and hot, humid summers, Tennessee's identity is built around culture, musical, culinary, and natural. People here are seen as friendly, proud, laid back, and deeply connected to tradition. Outsiders imagine Tennesseans strumming guitars on porches, debating the best barbecue, or cheering for every music festival. Locals say it's close to reality, just with more humidity. They speak in a warm, melodic southern drawl, often mixing storytelling, humor, and local references. Mountains, rivers, forests, and city skylines define the environment, while hot chicken, country music, and sweet tea define survival. Tennesseans are fiercely proud of their heritage, insisting they have the best music, the best scenery, and some of the most welcoming communities in the country. They joke that Tennessee could run as its own cultural republic, as long as the guitars stay tuned, the barbecue stays smoky, and everyone respects the blues. Michigan. Michigan is the freshwater heart of the United States and often portrayed as the nation's Great Lakes stronghold, a place defined by water, industry, and resilience. Its story begins with indigenous nations such as the Anishinaabe, Odawa, and Potawatomi, who lived along its lakes and rivers for centuries before European settlers arrived. The French explored and traded in the region in the 1600s, later ceded to the British, and eventually became part of the United States after the Revolutionary War. Michigan achieved statehood in 1837, quickly growing through lumber, mining, and the automotive boom that would turn Detroit into the Motor City. Known for freshwater beaches, forests, Great Lakes storms, snowy winters, and a mix of urban and rural life, Michigan's identity is built around resilience. Weather, industry, and community all shape its character. People here are seen as hardworking, down-to-earth, tough, and secretly proud of surviving harsh winters with style. Outsiders imagine Michiganders braving ice storms, cheering for auto racing or football, and navigating endless lakeshore roads. Locals admit it's mostly accurate. They speak in a practical, steady cadence, often flavored with Midwestern politeness and regional slang. Lakes, forests, auto plants, and snow-covered streets define the environment, while pasties, coney dogs, coffee, and craft beer define survival. Michiganders are fiercely proud of their state's natural beauty, industrial heritage, and sports culture, claiming they have the best lakes, the hardest working people, and an unmatched sense of grit. They joke that Michigan could function as its own freshwater republic. As long as the snowplows keep running, the Great Lakes stay navigable, and nobody messes with the auto industry. Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is the keystone of the United States and often portrayed as the nation's historical heartbeat, a place where industry, politics, and culture converge in cities, towns, and rolling countryside. Its story begins with indigenous nations such as the Lenape, Susquehannock, and Shawnee, who thrived along rivers and fertile valleys long before European settlers arrived. The English and Dutch established colonies in the 1600s, with William Penn founding Pennsylvania as a haven for religious freedom. The state played central roles in the American Revolution, the Industrial Boom, and the nation's political evolution, officially joined the Union in 1787 as the second state to ratify the Constitution. Known for rivers, rolling hills, industrial cities, farmland, and 4 distinct seasons, Pennsylvania's identity is built around diversity, urban and rural, historical and modern, hardworking and celebratory. People here are seen as resilient, practical, and proud of their local roots, with a strong sense of community and history. Outsiders imagine Pennsylvanians cheering for the Steelers, sampling Philly cheesesteaks, and debating pretzel versus soft pretzel. Locals say it's mostly true, but don't forget the wineries in Amish country. They speak in a mix of Mid-Atlantic, Philly, and Pittsburgh accents, depending on where you are, with expressions shaped by regional pride. Rivers, forests, cityscapes, and farmland define the environment, while pierogies, cheesesteaks, craft beer, and soft pretzels define survival. Pennsylvanians are fiercely proud of their history, culture, and landscapes, insisting they have the best sports fans, the richest heritage, and a mix of city energy and pastoral calm unlike anywhere else. They joke that Pennsylvania could function as its own mini-nation. As long as the football season is respected, the rivers stay navigable, and nobody messes with the Philly cheesesteak. Wyoming. Wyoming is the wide-open crown of the United States and often portrayed as the nation's ultimate frontier, a place where mountains, plains, and skies stretch endlessly, and nature sets the rules. Its story begins with indigenous nations such as the Shoshone, Arapaho, and Cheyenne who thrived in the valleys, rivers, and high plains long before European explorers arrived. The region became part of the United States through the Louisiana Purchase and later territorial organization, eventually achieving statehood in 1890 as the 44th state. Wyoming has always been defined by its rugged wilderness, pioneering spirit, and small tight-knit communities. Known for Yellowstone, Grand Teton, wide prairies, ranching culture, and weather extremes, Wyoming's identity is built around scale, vast landscapes, open skies, and a life lived close to nature. People here are seen as independent, resilient, and practical, shaped by the land's challenges and rewards. Outsiders imagine Wyomingites wrangling cattle, skiing mountains, and enduring winters with minimal fuss. Locals say that's not far off, though most are more likely sipping coffee while watching the sunrise over the Tetons. They speak in a steady, calm tone, influenced by frontier heritage and rural life. Mountains, plains, wildlife, and rivers define the environment, while beef, coffee, and whatever keeps you warm define survival. Wyomingites are fiercely proud of their landscapes and lifestyle, claiming they have the best open skies, the best adventure, and a sense of freedom that few states can match. They joke that Wyoming could function as its own frontier republic, as long as the wildlife behaves, the snowplows run, and everyone respects the vastness of the land. Nevada. Nevada is the desert jewel of the United States and often portrayed as the nation's playground of extremes, a place where arid landscapes, bright lights, and high stakes collide. Its story stretches back thousands of years to indigenous nations such as the Paiute, Shoshone, and Washoe, who thrived in the harsh desert and mountain environments long before European explorers arrived. Spanish explorers passed through in the 1700s, followed by Mexican rule, before Nevada became part of the United States after the Mexican-American War. It officially achieved statehood in 1864, growing from silver rush towns to the glitz of Las Vegas and the natural grandeur of its deserts and mountains. Known for deserts, casinos, neon lights, mountain ranges, and identity built on extremes, Nevada's character is shaped by both isolation and spectacle. People here are seen as independent, resourceful, adventurous, and often quietly amused by the world passing through their borders. Outsiders imagine Nevadans living in casinos, desert cabins, or high-altitude retreats. Locals say that's only partially true, with most preferring the balance between solitude and entertainment. They speak in a relaxed desert-home cadence, blending urban savvy with frontier practicality. Canyons, sagebrush, neon lights, and snow-capped peaks define the environment, while Basque cuisine, craft cocktails, and energy drinks define survival. Nevadans are fiercely proud of their landscapes and culture, insisting they have the best sunsets, the wildest entertainment, and a sense of freedom that few states can match. They joke that Nevada could operate as its own desert republic, as long as the casinos stay open, the water holds out, and nobody challenges the desert sun. Washington. Washington is the evergreen powerhouse of the United States and often portrayed as the nation's rain-soaked innovator, a place where mountains, forests, and coastline collide with tech hubs and coffee culture. Its story begins with indigenous nations such as the Coast Salish, Yakima, and Nez Perce, who thrived along rivers, coasts, and valleys long before European explorers arrived. The Spanish and British explored the region in the 1700s, followed by American settlers in the 1800s. Washington officially became a state in 1889, balancing lush wilderness with booming cities and a culture defined by both innovation and environmental stewardship. Known for towering evergreens, Puget Sound, volcanoes, coffee, and weather that often feels like a permanent drizzle, Washington's identity is built around contrast. Urban and wild, wet and bright, laid back yet highly ambitious. People here are seen as outdoorsy, environmentally conscious, tech-savvy, and quietly opinionated. Outsiders imagine Washingtonians hiking before work, debating coffee roasts, or complaining about rain. Locals say it's mostly true, but also about savoring space and scenery. They speak in a measured Pacific Northwest cadence, with inflections influenced by coastal culture, technology, and casual friendliness. Mountains, forests, waterways, and city skylines define the environment, while salmon, artisanal coffee, and locally brewed beer define survival. Washingtonians are fiercely proud of their natural beauty and cultural innovation, claiming they have the best landscapes, the best tech scene, and a quality of life that blends adventure with comfort. Massachusetts. Massachusetts is the cradle of the United States and often portrayed as the nation's historical and intellectual hub, a place where revolution, education, and coastal culture converge. Its story begins with indigenous nations such as the Wampanoag, Massachusetts, and Nipmuc, who lived along the coast and river valleys long before European settlers arrived. The Pilgrims landed at Plymouth in 1620, followed by Puritan settlements that shaped early colonial life. Massachusetts played pivotal roles in the American Revolution, the founding of American democracy, and the rise of education and innovation, officially becoming a state in 1788 as the sixth to ratify the Constitution. Known for cobblestone streets, historic harbors, autumn foliage, coastal winds, and a mix of bustling cities and quaint towns, Massachusetts' identity is built around intellect, tradition, and resilience. People here are seen as industrious, outspoken, proud, and deeply rooted in history. Outsiders imagine Massachusetts residents navigating Boston traffic, passionately debating sports rivalries, and quoting revolutionary history. Locals admit it's fairly accurate, though with more coffee and accents. They speak in a distinctive regional cadence, blending Bostonian directness with intellectual flourish. Harbors, historic landmarks, forests, and cityscapes define the environment, while clam chowder, baked beans, lobster rolls, and coffee define survival. Massachusetts residents are fiercely proud of their history, culture, and contributions to the nation, insisting they have the best schools, the richest heritage, and some of the most vibrant communities. They joke that Massachusetts could function as its own mini-republic, as long as the Patriots keep winning, the coffee stays hot, and nobody underestimates the power of a well-timed historical reference. Illinois. Illinois is the industrial and cultural backbone of the United States and often portrayed as the nation's crossroads, a place where rivers, prairies, and skyscrapers intersect with politics, commerce, and Midwestern charm. Its story begins with indigenous nations such as the Illinois, Potawatomi, and Miami, who lived across the fertile plains long before European explorers arrived. French explorers and traders arrived in the 1600s, followed by waves of settlers, and Illinois became a state in 1818. Chicago quickly emerged as a powerhouse of industry, transportation, and culture, while the rest of the state maintained strong agricultural roots. Known for Chicago's skyline, Lake Michigan, flatlands, farmland, and four-season extremes, Illinois' identity is built around contrasts: urban and rural, historic and modern, industrious and laid back. People here are seen as pragmatic, resilient, proud of their communities, and fiercely loyal to their cities and neighborhoods. Outsiders imagine Illinoisans navigating Chicago traffic, braving lake-effect snow, and debating deep dish versus thin crust pizza. Locals say it's mostly true, though they quietly cherish their small towns too. They speak in a straightforward, adaptable Midwestern cadence, with subtle regional inflections depending on where you are. Rivers, prairies, city streets, and farmland define the environment, while Chicago-style pizza, corn, craft beer, and hearty coffee define survival. Illinoisans are fiercely proud of their culture, landscapes, and heritage, insisting they have the best combination of urban energy, farmland productivity, and Midwest friendliness. They joke that Illinois could operate as its own diverse republic, as long as the highways are clear, the pizza stays cheesy, and the lake winds remain dramatic. Ohio. Ohio is the industrial and cultural heart of the Midwest, and often portrayed as the nation's swing state, a place where rivers, plains, and cities intersect with history, sports, and innovation. Its story begins with indigenous nations such as the Shawnee, Miami, and Erie, who thrived along its rivers and fertile land long before European settlers arrived. French and British explorers passed through in the 1600s and 1700s, and Ohio became part of the United States after the Northwest Ordinance. It officially became a state in 1803, quickly growing through agriculture, industry, and the rise of cities like Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Columbus. Known for rolling farmland, Great Lakes shores, river valleys, snow-filled winters, and a mix of urban and suburban life, Ohio's identity is built around resilience, practicality, and adaptability. People here are seen as hardworking, friendly, down-to-earth, and quietly proud of their communities. Outsiders imagine Ohioans cheering for football, navigating winter storms, and enjoying chili or Buckeye candies. Locals admit it's mostly true, though daily life is balanced with family, work, and weekend getaways. They speak in a clear, steady Midwestern cadence, shaped by both rural and urban influences. Rivers, lakes, city streets, and farmland define the environment, while chili, Buckeyes, coffee, and hearty meals define survival. Ohioans are fiercely proud of their state's history, industry, and culture, claiming they have the best sports rivalries, the most resilient communities, and a balance of city and country life unlike anywhere else. They joke that Ohio could function as its own Midwestern republic as long as the football season is respected, the winters are survived, and the Buckeyes keep rolling. Virginia. Virginia is the birthplace of the United States and often portrayed as the nation's historical and political anchor, a place where rivers, mountains, and colonial towns carry the weight of centuries. Its story begins with indigenous nations such as the Powhatan, Monacan, and Chickahominy, who thrived across the coastal plains and mountains long before European settlers arrived. The English established Jamestown in 1607, the first permanent English settlement in North America, and Virginia played central roles in the Revolution, the founding of the nation, and the Civil War. It officially became a state in 1788, blending deep historical roots with evolving modern culture. Known for rolling hills, the Blue Ridge Mountains, Chesapeake Bay, historic plantations, and seasonal extremes, Virginia's identity is built around tradition, natural beauty, and resilience. People here are seen as proud, hospitable, and deeply connected to both history and community. Outsiders imagine Virginians exploring colonial sites, cheering for college football, and enjoying fresh seafood or sweet tea. Locals say that's a fair depiction, with more nuance in daily life. They speak in a smooth southern to mid-Atlantic cadence, blending rural drawl with urban polish depending on the region. Rivers, mountains, coastlines, and farmland define the environment, while oysters, ham biscuits, sweet tea, and craft beer define survival. Virginians are fiercely proud of their heritage, landscapes, and culture, claiming they have the best history, scenery, and quality of life in the mid-Atlantic. They joke that Virginia could operate as its own historic republic, as long as the rivers flow, the mountains stay green, and nobody underestimates the power of a good old-fashioned barbecue. North Carolina. North Carolina is a diverse pulse of the American Southeast and often portrayed as the nation's blend of mountains, coast, and culture, a state where natural beauty and innovation coexist. Its story begins with indigenous nations such as the Cherokee, Tuscarora, and Catawba, who lived across the Piedmont Mountains and coast long before Europeans arrived. English and Scottish settlers established colonies in the 1600s, and the state became part of the United States in 1789 as the 12th state. From early agriculture and naval stores to textile mills and modern tech hubs, North Carolina has long balanced tradition with progress. Known for the Blue Ridge and Smoky Mountains, Atlantic beaches, rolling Piedmont hills, barbecue rivalries, and humid summers, North Carolina's identity is built around contrast. Rural and urban, old and new, mountains and coasts. People here are seen as friendly, resilient, and proud, shaped by both heritage and environment. Outsiders imagine North Carolinians hiking trails, cheering at college basketball games, or debating the best way to cook pork. Locals admit it's mostly accurate, though life also includes coffee shops, startups, and casual evenings on porches. They speak in a smooth southern cadence with regional variations reflecting mountains, Piedmont, or coastal influences. Mountains, rivers, coastlines, and farmland define the environment, while barbecue, sweet tea, and locally brewed beer define survival. North Carolinians are fiercely proud of their landscapes, culture, and communities, claiming they have the best mountains, the best beaches, and the strongest sense of identity in the Southeast. They joke that North Carolina could function as its own versatile republic, as long as the mountains stay majestic, the barbecue stays smoky, and everyone respects the coast.